Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "Moved the boss man's car as he requested." When I was young, I worked as an office administrator for an arrogant man who owned a chain of jewelry stores in the DC area. I learned a lot about people at that job. 2 locations were standalone, one was in a mall on a metro line, one was in a high-end hotel downtown. And the one where I worked was in a large mall in Virginia. I wasn't good at boundaries at that age, and I did a lot of menial tasks I probably should have declined because I didn't know better. So he pushed the boundaries. It was raining at the mall location, and the boss complained that he had worn his custom Italian leather shoes worth thousands and forgotten his rain shoe covers in his car that he had parked outside in an uncovered parking space behind the mall near an employee entrance. He told me to take his keys and move his Cadillac into the nearby covered mall parking garage so he would not have to get his shoes wet when he left the store. And that's when the devil made me grin. At the end of my workday, I took the car keys and went out into the rain in my heeled pumps and silk blazer office attire without a raincoat and moved his car into the large 5-story mall parking garage. I walked back to the store and put his keys on his desk, clocked out and went home. I never told him where in the huge parking garage I had parked his car. Random 3rd level, far corner. He never brought it up to me. The next one is titled, "Don't Believe Me Calling in Sick?" Here's the evidence. So this happened earlier this year, not too long after we'd gone into lockdown. We were all working from home and checking in daily with our teams virtually. One evening I start getting horrific period cramps. I have endometriosis, PCOS and a history of gyno issues, so I'm no stranger to this pain. I'm up most of the night in pain and trying not to vomit, so naturally I'm exhausted and still fighting the pain when the morning rolls around. I message my boss telling him I'm not feeling well, and he rings me to ask what's wrong. It's obviously a pretty embarrassing subject, especially with a male boss, and so I'm deliberately quite vague about it and probably come across as avoiding the questions. Later that day I log into my work emails and see an email from my boss to his manager, with my name as the subject. He's accidentally copied me into his email about me calling in sick and being deliberately vague about my illness. He finishes the email with, "We need to keep an eye on this." So, I hit a reply all, and write them both the following email: "Dear boss, I'm guessing I wasn't supposed to be copied in on this, but seeing as I am, I feel I need to set a few things straight. I have been up most of the night with excruciating period pains, which make me vomit and not sleep. I have blood clots coming out of me, my reproductive system hates me, and there is literally nothing I can do about it. I've had this for years, but every now and again it gets too bad for even me to handle, and I need a day off to deal with it. I am sure you can understand that discussing such matters with my male managers is not easy, hence the reluctance to talk about this over the phone. If you require any further information, please let me know and I will gladly assist." Needless to say, I had 2 very hasty replies apologizing for copying me into their emails, and emphasizing that periods are not a taboo subject with them, and hoping that I feel better soon. The next one is titled, "Don't Use Grammar and Editing, Don't Blame Me for Adding My Own." In 1999 I worked for a chain retail store that was known for its open commercials. I was hired seasonal, and while I was offered a job after the holiday season, one decided to move on, and January 1st, 2000, was my last day with this company. I'm sure you know where this is going. We go in and are handed a script for what to say if we are asked if we can accept credit cards. It read something like, "Do you take credit cards?" Yes, we take store credit card and cash. Also, if you haven't signed up for the store credit card, you can save 5% on all purchases in the store today by signing up now. I decided that since we got a commission on all card sign-ups and they had confirmed I would get a commission for any I signed up for on my last day. When asked, I recited the answer as, "Yes, we take store credit card and cash." Also, if you haven't signed up for the store credit card, you can save 5% on all purchases in the store today by signing up now. An hour and a half into my shift, management got word that the gal in shoes had let them know that they were taking the store card and cash only. They do a check and I've already signed up 40 people for the store card. The manager comes to see what I'm doing and listens to me. Once the area is clear of customers, she comes up laughing at my creative recitation of the answer they had given us. I was saying it exactly as they had worded it, but because they didn't give any grammar or punctuation outside of the period at the end, the comma after yes, my creative placement of a pause after the store card and cash lead the clients to believe we couldn't take normal cards. By the end of my shift, we had set an all-time record for the company of the number of new cards set up in the history of the store card. We had also set up more store card accounts than we had in the last 6 months at the store. Other associates had caught on to what I was doing and started doing it as well. The next one is titled, Goodwill Hunters. I work at one of the more popular chain thrift stores, processing and putting out electrical. Usually, we bring product out twice a day. The first time, we usually bring our cart out, go to lunch, and then put everything on the shelves when we get back. This helps get rid of at least 20% of the work we have to do. Mind you, we have signs that state customers aren't supposed to even be within 6 feet of the cart for safety purposes. We sometimes have to Tetris crap to get everything we processed on there, and it can get a bit sketchy. And it also makes our job more difficult putting product out if they actively look at our cart, which is why we bring it out early. My cart's usually well organized and free of hazard, and usually they help, so why not let people shop if they're being respectful? Well, we have people who come to the store at those times specifically to poach good items to resell them. We have a lot of respectful regulars whom I have actually built bonds with, but some of the non-consistent regulars are a nightmare. Examples: when you try to roll the rack onto the floor, they swarm you and start grabbing items, making it impossible to move. Calling out what items they want and fighting with others. One guy even jumped on the rack to get something before someone else. Now, I'm not shy or timid, but I am pretty reserved and usually have a carefree attitude, but this crap was annoying. So I started just telling them to let me park before they go at it. 2/10 had my coworker who used to do security come out with me where he told everyone to back off while I rolled the cart. 9/10, but he wasn't always available and it rightfully made me look like a witch. So there I was. I needed to be self-dependent. It only happened probably about half the time, and I didn't want to lose out on making my job easier, but also was just fed up. Then I had it. I roll my cart out like normal. If it's a good day, I leave my cart out and go to lunch. If it's not, well, they have one's chance. If I say, let me park first, and they don't listen, I roll my cart right back into the back. But not very far. Just inside so they can see the product still if they look through the window or as people walk in and out. Then when it's time to roll product, I calmly ask everyone to read and follow the signs. Then they start swarming me as I put items away. I politely remind them that during these times, I respectfully ask they maintain our social distancing guidelines. Then they started waiting at the section for the product they wanted most, but since they were there, I wouldn't dare dream of breaking my social distancing boundaries. So some stuff just didn't get put out, even though they'd see me walking to the area, item in hand, see them, turn around and put it back on my cart. If I can't put everything out in a timely manner, it goes back with me. If they really want it, they'll have another shot to act right when I come out again, in 3 hours. The next one is titled, Neighbor Tells Gramps He Should Mind His Own Damn Business. That advice costs neighbor most of his yard and a car. Gramps had just moved into a retirement park with a lot that backed up to county land that was a nature preserve. His backyard was basically non-existent, but he didn't mind as he got to look out over the preserve. However, he did marvel at how his next-door neighbor's backyard extended a good 8 feet past his, giving neighbor a nice space back there. Gramps tried to be friendly with all his new neighbors, exchanging phone numbers and the like, and one day he noticed the next-door neighbor was putting down expensive pavers that extended from his back door all the way to the old fence posts that designated the preserve boundary. Gramps watched the neighbor yank the 3 rickety fence posts out of the ground and move them back an extra 2 feet into the preserve before pounding them back in, then started to clear the land, intending to gain himself more area for his pavers. Gramps used to work for the National Park Services as a young lad, so he thought he had better warn his neighbor of the consequences of his actions, so he heads out back for a little chat. Neighbor is immediately defensive, and before Gramps says much, neighbor tells him, "You're new here, I've been here 10 years, and to mind your own damn business." Gramps decides not to press the issue. Nothing happens that year, but the following year, when most of the park emptied out to head north for the summer, the county comes by to check on the preserve. Gramps notices them going back and forth behind his neighbor's house. The workers are pulling out maps and taking photos and making phone calls, and soon more guys show up. Turns out neighbor has moved the posts several times over the years, and in reality his backyard is supposed to be even smaller than Gramps' backyard. To make it worse, neighbor put pavers in the back specifically to park both his golf cart and a cherry red sports car back there for the summer, so the county will have to move them before they can do anything else. They tape a notice to the front door and leave. Gramps goes over to read it, and it states that neighbor was in violation of encroaching onto protected lands. He has 30 days to move his car, tear up the pavers, and pay a fine of $11,000 because of damage to endangered species who inhabit the protected lands, as well as trespassing fees. Failure to do so within 30 days will result in golf cart and car being towed and impounded. Pavers will be dug up and carted off at neighbor's expense, and the fine will increase for every additional day past the deadline. 30 days comes and goes, so a week after that Gramps has quite the show, as first the car and cart were towed, pavers were dug up and hauled off, and the old fence posts and ropes were replaced with metal posts embedded into buried cement bases, connected by steel cables. Whole process took several weeks to finish, but the preserve looked a lot more legit when they were done. A few solar cameras were installed so the county could monitor the wildlife and encroachers remotely. Meanwhile, more notices were taped to the front door of neighbor's house. By November, the snowbirds were flooding back into the park, including neighbor. That was Gramps' second show of the summer, as neighbor reads all the notices, digging down until he reads the first one, then runs out back and starts screaming and cussing up a storm before running back to his car to dig out his cell phone so he can call the county to find out where his car and golf cart were. Gramps stays indoors to avoid the guy as he is frantically trying to unload his car, turn on his water and electricity, get the AC and the toilets going, and all the while trying to get someone at county to pick up the phone and give him some answers. He finally gets a live person and proceeds to scream at them while on speakerphone about his car and cart, so the call keeps getting kicked to other people because who wants to help a screamer? Basically, neighbor is told to come to the county office to get this straightened out. 3 days later, neighbor catches Gramps outside and asks if he was here when the county stole his car and destroyed his backyard. Gramps said he was, and neighbor says, "Well, why didn't you call me when you saw them putting notices on my door? You had my number up north." Gramps said he had thought about doing that, but figured neighbor would prefer him to mind his own damn business, so he decided against it. The next one is titled, "Get Those Decals Off the Truck." This happened quite a few years ago now, but is my favorite malicious compliance I have personally been a part of. I worked at a vehicle rental agency, and we had cube trucks that had decals on them for a promotion that was no longer ongoing. I was at our main location, we had 5 in the city, when the manager asked me to remove the decals. So I started chipping away at them. After about an hour I had removed about 4 square inches of them, as they were pretty old, brittle, and it was cold out. Decals are much easier to remove when warm, but we'll get to more about that in a bit. At this point the manager asked me to do something else, and said that he would remove the rest of them himself. Seeing as it was tedious and lowly work, I was impressed that he was willing to do it himself and said as much to him, to which he relied. I would never ask my staff to do something I wouldn't do myself. Turned out this was pretty much nonsense, as a couple months later I was working at another location when the same truck checked in. It still had the decals on it, and the only removed parts were the parts one had taken off myself. The lying prick hadn't done a damn thing after telling me he would. Over the next few months the manager and I had it out a few times when he was being completely unreasonable about things, and weren't on the best terms at this point. He stopped in my new location one day and started hollering at me about the decals still being on the truck. "The ones you said you were going to take off?" I asked. "That was a different truck," he yelled, obviously assuming I didn't recognize my own work where I had started taking them off. I also had learned from our mechanic department that decals come off way easier if you heat them with a heat gun. They'll usually come off in one big piece instead of flaking them away over hours and hours. So I told the manager to take it to them, or bring me a heat gun. He did not like that. He started yelling at me that I was giving the company a bad name and so on, then stormed out the door and told me to get it done. No problem. I know how to heat the stickers up. We accidentally had brake cleaner delivered instead of glass cleaner a few days earlier, and when you put a lighter to the stream of brake cleaner spray coming out of the can, it would burn like the damned sun. The heat and light was unreal. So I aimed the can at the side of the truck and lit my lighter and sprayed. The decal warmed up, and I got about half the sticker in one swipe. So now I needed to heat it up again, hit it again with the spray and the lighter and got the second half off, but the problem was that the sticky residue left behind had collected all the sooty crap from the flame, and a bunch of it had stuck to the side of the truck going up to the top. I repeated on the other side and got almost identical results, but hey, the job is done. The truck drove around the city for the next year looking like it had been set on fire. Every time I saw it I laughed. The worst part is I did it specifically to get in crap, but when one of the staff brought up what I had done at a staff meeting, I missed the manger. Apparently got a good laugh out of it. The next one is titled, But It's Not a House. My uncle is a farmer in rural Ohio and has a lot of Amish neighbors. Earlier this year, one of them purchased an old farmhouse not far from my uncle's house. They got into a conversation about what his plans for the property were. The Amish man said the house was in pretty bad shape but came with a few dozen acres of surrounding land, and he was planning on just removing the house and using the property as farmland. He figured that the cheapest and quickest solution was just to burn the house down. Uncle: whoa there, I'm not sure that's legal. Amish man: why not? I own the house. There are no other houses nearby that could be damaged. It won't hurt anyone. Uncle: I don't disagree, but the county has regulations about how buildings can be demolished. I'm pretty sure that burning down a building is not allowed, even if you own it. You should check with the county sheriff's office first. So the Amish man borrowed my uncle's phone to call the sheriff's office, and it turns out my uncle was right. The sheriff told him that if he set the house on fire he would have to pay a hefty fine. The Amish man was not very pleased but thanked my uncle for letting him know. A few weeks passed and nothing happened. Then my uncle was driving home one day and saw that the house had been demolished. It looked to him like someone had just pushed it over with a bulldozer, because what was left was a large pile of lumber and roofing and vinyl siding. My uncle assumed they would be paying someone else to haul the wreckage away. And yes, before you say so, I know the Amish can't use bulldozers, but they really have a lot of loopholes in that system of theirs. They can't own modern technology, but there seems to be no prohibition against borrowing or hiring modern technology. Anyway, during work the next day, my uncle sees an enormous column of black smoke rising into the sky. Alarmed, he hops into his truck and follows the smoke cloud and discovers a large crowd of Amish watching a giant greasy bonfire that was the remains of the house. My uncle finds his neighbor in the crowd and walks over. Uncle: so you decided to burn it after all? Amish man: up. Uncle: what are you going to do when the sheriff comes? Amish man: he already came and went. Uncle: and? Amish man: well, he told me that he'd have to fine me for burning down my house. And I said, but it's not a house. It's just a pile of garbage. Burning your garbage is legal in their county. My uncle routinely does it himself. Uncle: what did the sheriff say? The Amish man smiled slowly. There wasn't anything he could say. He got into his car and drove away. The last one is titled, White Shirt Compliance. First off, for full disclosure, I am an ex-Mormon for about 18 months. Second, to understand this post, I need to explain something about Mormon culture unique to Utah. There is this unwritten law that males in the church in Utah need to wear white shirts to church, as it represents purity and cleanliness. You don't really see this outside of Utah much, maybe a bit of Idaho, Nevada, and Colorado. My leaders took it one step further, and required that white shirts need to be worn when attending temple recommend interviews. In order to attend a Mormon temple, you need a recommend which is valid for 2 years. When it expires, you need to visit your local church leadership, and go through an interview to get a new recommend. When I moved into my new house, my recommend expired shortly after, and I was not aware of this requirement to wear a white shirt to the interview. I donned a light blue dress shirt, with matching tie and dress slacks, and went into the interview. I was told that because I was new, he would complete the interview, but for future interviews, I needed to wear a white shirt, or he would turn me away. 2 years later, I decided to call his bluff, and deliberately wore a charcoal grey dress shirt. He wasn't bluffing, and turned me away, scheduling a later date for our interview when I would be in a white dress shirt. Well, I was prepared. I went shopping, and found this very Western cowboy white shirt with black trim and minimal design, and black buttons. I found a bolo tie, belt with large belt buckle, black jeans, and cowboy boots. I went from a very dressed-up, sharp-looking man in a colored dress shirt to a kind of dressed-up but mostly casual cowboy with a white shirt. He was not happy with me, but held the interview anyway. I left the church shortly after that. I like to think I went out on a high point. Thanks for listening.